When the Stags recorded a win at Swindon last Friday, we all thought the Easter weekend would propel and perhaps even solidify us in the playoffs, thank you, but those pesky Easter Gremlins ruined our plans with a 1-1 draw against the league's bottom side, leaving us in limbo. With 6 games now to go, the Stags are again on the outside looking in, a point off the playoffs, but with a vital game in hand. Will the next 7 days see the pendulum swing once more, or have Clough's men missed the golden opportunity at the right time? Tonight on the Mansfield Matters Podcast, we'll discuss the highs and lows of the Easter doubleheader as it's cruise control around the Magic Roundabout, but stutters and stalls at home. We'll talk open training sessions, prospects of tomorrow today, perception again, and much, much more in between. As ever, we welcome, encourage and desire your input via the live feed comments. So get your questions, comments and opinions in now to have your say on your team. This is the show for the fans by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters Podcast, proud to be part of the talkSPORT fan network. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Mansfield Matters Podcast, the show for the fans by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield always matters. And I'm going to hit you with a disclaimer early doors in the show. Tonight could be a very technical nightmare. Broadband issues at the proper Mansfield Matters HQ means I've come all the way back to the bedroom I spent 10 years of my life in. It's very, very weird. That's why there's a blank background behind me. There's no Mansfield Matters stuff. And the Wi-Fi, I forgot to bring my long cable. I left in a rush and thought, I've got to do the podcast. My broadband went down half an hour ago. So I jumped in the car, hot-footed it to my dad's house and jumped on his Wi-Fi. So this podcast tonight is a hot, sweaty mess. Talking of which, let's say hello to the last, aka hot, sweaty messes. They are Cam Felton. Good evening.
Rude.
It was a good link, I thought.
Oh, yeah, not too bad. I've heard worse.
And of course, Mr. Alan Wilson as well. How are you?
Good evening, Craig. Good evening, everybody. Mine keeps flickering a little, so, with the gremlins and whatever you said, I'll just keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think there's probably an unwritten rule in podcast land that you should never call an episode, you should never include the word gremlins in an episode because then it's going to go wrong. And that's exactly what I've done tonight. As always, like I said in the intro, welcome, encourage, and whatever the other word I used was, desire your comments, questions and opinions on all things at Mansfield Town. We've got 2 games to talk about. We've got a bumper Easter weekend to reflect upon. So let's start, Cam, with the highs, and then we'll move on to the lows. The highs, of course, being the first victory Mansfield have recorded at Swindon since before, I think, the dawn of time. Good Friday was Great Friday.
Victory since 1977 at Swindon. Yeah, fantastic. I think it was a result that we needed, knowing that they were one of the teams that has fully pulling us apart this season. Obviously demolished us 5-2 at the one call back in September, October, whenever it was. They were the first real side. Personally, I was particularly impressed with this season. I don't think anybody else has until Salford. I don't think it was just like real problems, just like that we couldn't rectify. They just completely outplayed us in that game. And then I was fortunate enough to do some camera work for Oldham Athletic on Good Friday, and I'd got flash scores on my phone, just sat on this chair behind me. The only reason I use flash scores is because you don't have to update it; it just updates itself. So I glance over my shoulder after a short stoppage in play, and I see that we've gone 1 down after 4 minutes. I'm thinking, for God's sake, here we go again. We have a positive result the weekend before against Crawley, and then we go and throw it away the following weekend. But what a turnaround in the first half, and just a fantastic performance. Obviously, Nigel was very disappointed in the goals that they conceded, and probably said they should have cut those chances out if we're 100% on it or whatever. And yeah, I agree with it. But on the whole, it's still a fantastic result, and it put us right back where we were wanting to be, which is inside the top 7.
I'm glad you said Nigel and not Clough, because then that had sparked a whole new debate. We'll come on to that later on. Let's get Mr. Wilson's views on Good Friday. It was pretty much like Cam said, Alan. When that first goal went in, I think we were all sat in the stands. Anyone who's got a Mansfield sound persuasion would have been thinking, "Oh no, it's going to be one of those afternoons."
It was because I sat watching it on iFollow, and I said to the wife, when they went 1-0 down, I thought, I never even panicked or anything. It was just something that I knew that was going to get ready, if you like. I just got a funny feeling that we were going to win the game. Everything seemed to be quite, they were comfortable. Edge didn't go down when they went 1 down, and they just played like we know Mansfield can play, and it was a joy to watch, and I think they fully deserved it. Nice to see. Like Cam said, we hadn't beat him since whenever it was, and it was just a joy to watch. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's so frustrating though, isn't it, Cam, that, we do that on Good Friday, we put in a good performance, we leave the ground absolutely buzzing, maybe a little bit shell-shocked as in terms of how easy it was and how simplistic it was. And we really then buoyed up for Bank Holiday Monday at home to the league's bottom side, and we throw everything at them and come away with a point, and it felt like a defeat. I saw a few people on social media afterwards sort of maybe criticising a few of the boos and a few of the frustrated comments, but I'll be honest, I think some of those comments were deserved. We weren't good enough, and that's the difference. We have to be on it in those games.
I think the boos were harsh because it wasn't a loss. It felt like it, but it wasn't a loss. It's not that we played badly. There was just that one moment just before half time again that we've not been switched on for, and it's a real bugbear. But you've got to look at the positives as well of the amount of chances that we created. It was brilliant. It was a really good game to watch from a Mansfield perspective. The chances that we had. Obviously, the biggest frustration, though, is that we've not put them away. And that's 3rd, 4th, 5th game this season where we've absolutely peppered the opposition and then not took advantage of it. It's 21 shots from that game, 7 on target, and we've only scored from 1 of them. And if we're serious about automatics, playoffs, whatever this team thinks they can reach this season, whatever Nigel can think this team can reach this season, only putting 1 goal away from 7 on-target chances, 21 total, is simply not good enough. You look at Bradford on Easter Monday. They put something to the sword and beat them 3-0. There was absolutely no reason why we couldn't have done that to Sutton, but we just didn't take our chances. And there's been numerous games this season where we just don't take our chances. We look at then the opposite going the other way. Look at the opposition, who they've then faced. They've faced Leyton Orient, they've faced Northampton, they've faced Stockport, they've faced Salford, where the opposition's been able to go to there, or they've come to them, or whatever, and they've been able to score goals, which is something that we obviously haven't, which is frustrating because other teams are doing it, but we can't, even though we're creating more chances than most teams in the league currently.
It's funny, Alan, because I think I'd be sat here if this set of results, a win at Swindon and a draw at home to the league's bottom side, whoever that may be. Let's just go with Rochdale. If this was September, maybe October at a push, I'd be saying that's fine because we've got 4 points from across 2 games and we've played really, really well in both games, and we've got the entirety of the season to build upon that and gain the momentum from it. But the fact is we've got 6 games left, and it's now, like we saw last season, where these games count more than anything. When it is so tight, it's on a knife edge. When it is so tight, the narrowest of margins count, and just 1 goal, like we saw last season, 1 goal against Rochdale to make it 2-1 and win, could be the difference between Mansfield finishing in 7th and having another shot at promotion through the playoffs, and Mansfield enjoying a trip to Forest Green Rovers next season.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, but I mean, who'd have thought that Mansfield? I mean, we're all confident enough thinking Mansfield can go away and win, but who'd have thought they'd have put 4 against Swindon? To be fair, and it was like It sounds a bit. What's the word? Pessimistic. This, but it's not.
Yes, Alan,
I
come
half
on.
expected. I half expected that to be a bit of a downer, if you like, 1-1. But I wasn't downhearted because of the way we'd played and got the 4 goals against Swindon. It was going to happen sometime. The goalkeeper had a very good game, but that's what he gets paid for. It didn't fall for us in the box, and it was just one of the things. I'd be set going home if we hadn't had 21 shots, if that makes sense. These things happen in football, and I've learned a long while ago that as a Mansfield Town fan, you just get on with it. You don't get too high, you don't get too low. You just hope for the best, and you feel positive all the time. But I just thought something was going to happen. I'd like to have seen them win, obviously, but a draw, like Roger said, 4 points out of the 6. You'd have thought we'd have drawn at Swindon. You'd have been laughing. Win at Rochdale, and I don't think we'd be having this conversation. That's my spin on it.
Frustrating. It's just so frustrating because it's a typical Mansfield thing to do. But for me, it's more than picking 4 points up over Easter's good because last season, Easter weekend, we got square root of sod all, which ultimately did cost us in the end, and made us fall short of automatics and. Probably had an hampering on us in the playoffs as well in terms of consistency. But it's more than just a points game now. It's more than just about picking points up and putting goal difference, numbers in the goal difference column, numbers in the goals for, goals against. It's more than that now. It's a psychological battle. And for me, Cam, I think what we did on Monday in drawing at home to the league's bottom side, Rochdale, having had X number of shots but only having scored 1 goal, is a massive psychological boost to those teams that are in and around us because what it's saying is Mansfield can play well all they like. They can knock it around the pitch. They can string together pass after pass. They can shoot as much as they want, but they lack quality. They lack the finishing touch. And what that does, it gives a team talk to every single team above us in and around us. Just go play with fire and hit and shoot because we lack that killer instinct. Do we not?
Depending who we're playing against. Obviously, like we're saying, we stuck 4 past Crawley, we stuck 4 past Swindon, and out of all of those games, you were probably thinking Rochdale was probably the one that you'd have probably put 4 or 5 past. Swindon, granted, they're not on the greatest run of forms, but they're still just about clinging on for the hope of the playoffs, and it's unlikely now, but. At that point, it was still possible. And Crawley, they were one of the form sides headed into the weekend. And Rochdale, they've had a decent turnaround in form. But again, if we are totally ambitious about where we want to be next season or where we want to be come the end of the season, then we should have been absolutely peppering them. And going back to the psychological thing, you look at games. One game in particular over the weekend was AFC Wimbledon versus Salford. Salford got a penalty in the 92nd minute to draw level. They missed. They then equalised a minute later in the 93rd, and then in the 96th they went and won it. And it was just that mentality. It's just like, for God's sake, why can't we do this? And granted, we beat Wimbledon 3-1 a couple of months ago, but it's still the point of we were playing on paper a worse team than that, and we could pull a result off like that, but we can't beat teams on our own patch this season for whatever reason. We just can't seem to get results where we need them. You look at Barrow for another season where it's another game where you're thinking like, right, we should do this. We don't. Sutton, we should do this. We don't. And it's frustrating, but yeah, I don't understand it.
It's the life of a Stags fan.
Oh, too right.
Simple as when you pay your money, you know what you're going to get. frustration.
You certainly do. It's an interesting point that Cam makes, Alan, about the home versus the away thing, because again, I think our away form's arguably been better than our home form this season. It's interesting that he spoke about the Salford thing as well, because they had that mentality about them to, even when they missed the penalty, to still push forward, still push for an equaliser, and then push on once more. There was always hope in their game. Whereas for Mansfield, the longer the clock ticked on, as the sands of time began to run out, the frustrations grew and the desperation grew as well. And I think it's almost like being stuck in the mud sometimes. It's like the longer the clock goes on, the more concrete pours into the boots.
I know there's sometimes you can think to yourself, you could play another 35 minutes and you've just got that feeling that they wouldn't score. And then there's other times you can turn it around and within a minute, you realise that they're going to score or they have scored. But even like Cam said with the Salford game, we don't know what happened again, with Wimbledon. They could have crumbled for all we know. It sounds as though they did. But, their mentality can't have been right. We could have done exactly the same if we'd have been in the same position. I just don't think don't get too downhearted. There's still 6 games to go, and I think we'll be there or thereabouts.
The problem in that 6 games to go, though, is the fact that we have 3 home games back to back. As Richard says in the comments, Cam, too many drop points at home this season, simple as. And if you look at the teams that we play at home in those final 4 games of the season, Stevenage, they dropped off it from the automatics. They're now trying to find a little bit of form to propel themselves, maybe back up into third, consolidate the playoffs and try and go in there. That's a tough game. Leyton Orient will come to us for that. Don't forget, that's our game in hand against Leyton Orient that we've got. And they may well need to come to the one call that night to win the division. Massive game. Harrogate, maybe a dead rubber, and then Colchester away. But those 3 home games for me, Cam, are absolutely critical. And I'm actually worried by virtue of the fact they are at home, because we need to get some. I think these next 2 games for us are huge in terms of gathering momentum to go into those 3 home games, because if we're not in a positive frame of mind at the start of those 3 home games, I think we'll struggle to get 4 points out of those 3.
It's a difficult one, because you look at when it comes to the end of the season, and a lot of people would say that if you gave me the choice of who I'd want to play, I'd much rather play the sides at the top of the division.
Definitely.
You look at Rochdale on Monday. Granted, it was very smash and grab for their attempt, but they hit the ball once, and then there was a little bit dangerous, but there was nothing major going forward. But the defensive performance that they put in was absolutely fantastic, and if it weren't for Richard O'Donnell, it would have been a cricket score.
He's an incredible keeper, by the way. He's had an incredible
for a fantastic keeper. But it's moments like that can save your season. It's very unlikely that Rochdale will save themselves, but they'll have been coming to the one call on Monday thinking, you know what, we'll take if we can get a point, brilliant. That's a fantastic. We should be getting absolutely hammered, and they got a point, and it was just having that belief. And I think the most frustrating thing from a Mansfield standpoint is, I think Nigel hit it absolutely nail on the head in his post-match, was that we had chances towards the end of the game. We just didn't get it into the box. We tried to play that extra pass around the edge of the box. We tried to slip somebody down the line when it wasn't necessarily on. We just tried things that weren't necessarily there, and rather than just putting it in the box where we've got bodies, we didn't, and that's what's come back to bite us. How many chances did we waste in the last 15 minutes where because we just didn't get the ball into the box, and we just get dispossessed and they lump it upfield, and we're back to square one again.
Yeah, we do have a distinct lack of urgency, and have that lack of firepower and that willing to try and get a goal. I'll come on to why in a second. Rogers half mentioned it in his comment, but I want to just touch on the comment from Chris in the live feed. 3 games in a row, and the game I fear the most is Harrogate. I said that was a potential dead rubber. I've just looked at the league table and reminded myself that it very much isn't. that again, they have a game in hand, but they are only 3 points clear of the drop zone. They're on 41, Crawley on 38. So what's that? 3-4 points clear of the drop zone. So they're still banging trouble, as are Colchester as well. So there is no easy, other than probably the next 2 games against Grimsby, who are pretty much solidified ding-ding in mid-table, and Newport, who are just about, are fairly safe. After that, every game is almost a 6-pointer for both teams. And I don't think, Alan, that we have enough about us, in not necessarily in terms of personnel, because I think Nigel will probably find something up his sleeve to throw 1 or 2 players who we aren't expecting to be back in the fold for those 4. But I don't think we have enough up here mentality to cope with that amount of pressure, plus a potential 2 games on top of that.
Well, only time will tell for that, Craig, as we all know. But I am very, very confident that out of the 3 home games, we will amass 7 points. I really am. I just can't see any problems with Leyton Orient. We battered them at their place. And, it's a no-lose situation, isn't it? We've got to go for it. It's no good sitting back. We want to get in the playoffs. We want to overtake Salford, with our game in hand. I think one of the most tricky games, personally, will be, is it next Tuesday when we play Newport?
Yeah, Tuesday night.
That'll be that'll be the make or break game.
Yeah, we don't do well at Newport. When was the last time we beat Newport?
I don't know, but I think that could be the fly in the ointment, as it were. I haven't got no problem with the others. And I'm like Cam, I would sooner play Leyton Orient and Stevenage any day of the week.
Interesting to see how it unfolds. Whether we'll feel the same when we speak this time next week or not will remain to be seen. Richard, though, in the comment, Alan says he loves your optimism. Of course, we can always rely on you. I want you to change your name on the podcast to Alan, the ultimate optimist Wilson, or something like that. You are the ray of sunshine to my pessimism. You had a little bit of it, but you would refuse to let me break you down. You refuse to let me get under the skin and let that pessimism sleep in.
Just one thing, Craig, if I can. My granddaughter said on Saturday before I came to the match, she says, Grandad, we're going to win 5-0. And Nigel Clough is going to score all 5 goals.
Oh, bless her.
So I mentioned, after I'd announced the teams on Saturday, I turned around, I don't know if you saw me, and I mentioned that to Nigel, and Nigel says, "Oh, he wishes they were fit enough."
I did see you looked. I did see you to speak to Nigel as well. I just wonder what you had.
That's what I said. I just told him that, made him laugh.
Oh, bless. Gotta love her. She obviously gets the optimism from you.
Obviously.
Paul in the comments also says, "Hope Stevenage fail. Evans is all mouth." It would be some sort of justice if they did fall short after everything, but they've had a good enough season. If you look at, you think it's tight in the conference, it's still tight in League Two as well. You have to say, might not have been as exciting as it was last season, but as it comes towards the end, you've got 3 teams all vying for 3rd spot, and I'd probably say the top is out of sight. I think that's Orient's. That's pretty much Orient's to be sewn up, you look at that 3rd place, Stockport. Who'd have thought they would have been up there a few weeks ago? Carlisle, they've been up there all season. Stevenage have dropped off, but even Bradford aren't out of the reckoning, and pretty much Nora Salford for maybe for the top if things go our way.
Wait until Monday.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's funny how one set of fixtures can change absolutely anything. We may after Saturday's trip to Grimsby, we may not be feeling grim. We may be feeling happy after a trip to the seaside. I doubt it, because Cleethorpes is a shithole. But anyway, moving swiftly on. Let's go to the comment earlier from Roger. The lad Gale had a good game. One slight criticism: he's trying too hard. Let go and chill and play. I think it's a great point. I want to touch upon James Gale, because I think we have got a phenomenal prospect in him if we get his nurturing and development right. And absolutely, for me, between now and the end of the season, I see no reason why he should be dropped. I think he brings energy, he brings creativity, he's good on and off the ball, he's physical, he dominates teams, he's good moving with the ball, he brings others into play, and he battles, and that is what we need with 6 games to go. We need someone to wear the shirt with pride and battle it. As for the trying too hard, that's just being a young player eager to impress your peers. Let's not forget where this lad was 2 seasons ago, not even dreaming of a career in professional football. And now, arguably for me, Cam, he's one of our strongest players with 6 games to go.
All bar Jason Law. That's a different conversation, though. But it's the same old with young talent that we've got or had. We can't waste it. Basically, you look at the talent that we had, and we rushed it, and it hampered their careers. Simple as. You look at all right, granted it was a big rebrand, but of the players that have come through our youth academy in the last 15 years, who are the ones that have particularly made it out of there with sort of like any sort of credit? You'd probably look and you think Tom Naylor is about the only player I can think of that's actually sort of like been successful so far. And Tyree Sinclair is a weird one because he wasn't in our youth academy and then he was. Jason Law, it's just a frustrating situation with him because he should be getting more chances than he is. Jack Thomas, Liam Marsden, all fantastic players, but we rushed them back. We rushed them into the first team setup too quickly. So your comment, Craig, about nurturing his talent is by far the most important thing. Yes, we want to give him game time, and it's very much, is he being given game time because we have to?
Yes.
Partially?
Yeah. No, partially about it. He is. If Will Swan was available and Rhys Oates was fully fit and he liked Danny Johnson, he would be playing. They would be playing ahead of him.
It's more the Johnson thing.
It's just this percentage of Gale's talent, which is getting him in, and his attitude and his application. There's a percentage of that, but there's a lot to be said about the fact that he's one of very few available.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's got to take his chance now. If one of those chances that he had on Monday went in, brilliant. He'd have probably bagged 1 or 2 more, maybe. I think had we have scored again in that second half earlier on, then I think Rochdale would have fallen to pieces. They didn't look defensively fantastic when we scored. We could have easily put 2 or 3 past them in the first half, but it was just having that confidence. And yeah, we've got to take into account the fact that he is still a young lad. He's still learning his trade, and like you said, a couple of years ago, he wasn't dreaming of like professional football. This is no disrespect to Long Eaton, but it's not exactly the best level. And the fact that he's got to an older age for a sort of like what you would expect of an academy player to then be fortunately picked up by a Football League side is very lucky on his part. And now he's got this fantastic opportunity. He's got to go and take it. Because, yeah, you're keeping players like Danny Johnson outside, and that's a whole different conversation in itself. But the fact is, he's easily replaceable. Like, there's players that you could play up front. You could play John Bowery up front. You could play Jason Law at left back. That fixes your problem straight away. It's not a fantastic fit, and I know a lot of people are complaining about it, but this is no disrespect to him, but he is an expendable member of the squad currently because he's a young lad and he's got things to prove. So he's got to take these opportunities, and I hope that he does because he's a fantastic talent, and he was very, very, very unlucky on Monday not to get a goal, and then the Sutton game last week was just a difficult game for everybody, but he still battled, he still did well, and he did better than Danny Johnson did.
Yeah. More James Gale chat to come. Get in the comments about what you make of him. We'll be asking, should he start the final 6 games of the season. Is this the chance for him to thrive? And we'll also heap praise on Kieran Wallace too. All of that to come here on the Mansfield Matters podcast. Do not go anywhere. This is a show for the fans, by the fans. Mansfield Matters, a proud member of the talkSPORT Fan Network. Welcome back to the show for the fans, by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters podcast. Before the little break there, we were talking all things James Gale. I was delighted on Monday, Alan, when I saw his name on the starting team sheet. And like I alluded to a little bit earlier on, I want to give him a chance. I want to see him starting for the final 6 games of the campaign. Because in terms of the way we are now playing, which is with a back 4, almost a 4-3-3, it's fluid, it's creative, it's attacking, it's on the front foot. I think that suits James Gale very, very well indeed. The only thing I ask of Nigel Clough is please don't isolate him out on the right-hand side and make him more of a winger. Let him have freedom and let the other players who are more experienced fill those gaps.
Yeah, I'd agree totally there, 100%, because I think if Oaksy or Swan do come back, like you said, he'll probably be relegated to the bench. And like Cam said before, he's got to take his chance, which I think he is doing. The way he turns players, and just because he is quite, he's quite a fast lad as well, isn't he? He's quite deceptive with his pace. He can move away from him. The way he turns them, it's unbelievable to watch for a young lad. But, when you were saying about the other players, didn't Bap come through the youth team and whatever, or wasn't there such a thing then?
Yeah, it was the last. It was sort of the last of the older youth team, wasn't he? Because he came.
I wasn't sure. Like by the rebrand.
Yeah.
Right.
When the Radfords came in,
I'm with you.
Yeah. From when Murray had the youth team onwards, I think Cam was alluding to when we changed it to the academy.
Yeah, I see what you mean now.
Yeah. Back to James Gale though, and I think the only thing he is missing is a goal. Because he is tremendous. And I think do you know what? I think he really complements like Davis Keeler done very, very well. Even Lucas Akins, he's brought Akins' game out of him. He's got the ball to feet. He's got Akins to turn and swivel and create space. He is some player.
He is. I can't agree more. I don't have a problem seeing him on the team sheet. But if, like I say, if Swanee does come back and Oates, he might get relegated to the bench. But what a prospect and what a talent to come on for the last 20 if needed. Wherever, however you use him in the last 6, 7, possibly 8 games, make the most of him, because I think he will be good for Mansfield Town in the future. Yeah, and that's it. But the caveat to that, though, Cam, is we've got to get it right. And I think that's why I'm so desperate to keep him starting in this last regardless of whether or not we've got Will Swan and Rhys Oates back, because they're excellent players. And, Will Swan is a similar age. He's obviously got a good ground at Forest Academy and is, scored a lot of goals for us this season. But I wouldn't put that, I think he's very good to come on. I think Will Swan, we saw it at the start of the season a little bit. Actually, when we brought him on, we got a little bit more out of him. And we didn't get a lot out of him when he started at some point. So maybe I'd do it the opposite way around. Play Gale for 60 minutes and then bring him on. That's it. Whichever way you do it, when you've got those players in abundance coming back, it don't matter which way you do it, does it? Whoever's playing, who's got the shirt, let them keep it and let the others come on from the bench if needed.
Keely in the comments says, go on.
Sorry, just a quick one. Yeah, if you look at Saturday's game, James Gale was absolutely blowing, but we didn't have the options on the bench. If he was available, Will Swan would have absolutely thrived in that game.
Well, or Reeves,
I agree.
It'd have been an onslaught, an absolute onslaught. You think you'd got Akins, Keeler, Dunn, and Gale, Oates, whoever, Law, Bowery, etc.
Sod it. I've got a new formation for Clough. 4-1-5. 5 up front.
I'm sure we played 5 up front at some point this year.
Why not?
I can't remember which
it might get to that.
I'm sure at some point this season, I think it might have been the Crawley game, we did have like 5 up front at some point this season.
Oh dear, it's funny. At least we're not playing 5 at the back anymore. We need to avoid that because we are a lot better. We are a lot better in the 4. If only somebody had been saying it since October. Anyway, Keely's comment. James has done really well. He has played some decent balls. I agree. He's just lacking a goal, and I think that will boost his confidence more. Absolutely. Even if it's a penalty, I remember a couple of years ago, I think it might have been Jimmy Knowles when he got his first goal. It was a penalty, and we gave it him, and he slotted it in just to get him off the mark, just to get him on. The thing about James as well is he doesn't fall into that category of being one of a kind. He's not just a fox in the box. He's not just a target man. He's not just a false 9. He's not any one single thing. He's a rounded player. He can get in and out of the box. He's got a venomous shot on him. He can run. He can carry. He can defend. He can hold off. I think Nigel Clough would be, dare I say, a little bit mad not to utilise that, especially when you've got the older players around him. I have to say as well, Davies Keeler Dunn,
quality.
He's next level, and I was against signing him in January as a midfielder because a lot of his, at the time we had a lot of midfielders, and I was thinking we don't need another midfielder to come and sit in there. But actually, the games he's dropped back and played a little bit deeper, played in the hole just behind the front 2, and allowed that freedom to roll across that midfield, he has been mouthwatering. He picks a pass like Ryan Stirk, like Ryan Stirk did. He sees passes which weren't on. But when he goes up front and plays a little bit further forward, we lose a little bit of him. So let's just keep him held back, and let's let Akins and Gale, or Akins and Oates, or Gale and Oates, sounds like a tribute on that, go and have that freedom and that space to build into, and let's have Keeler Dunn dropped a little bit back. So, Roger asks, what's happened to Maris? Well, he came on, didn't he, on Monday, or did he start? I can't remember. Did he start or come on?
Started Monday.
No, he started, yeah.
Started,
and he had the same problem again. It was the bottom of his heel. Felt it. He couldn't burst on that speed. He was all right to kosher about, if you like, but that's no good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're playing that's the problem we've got. And I think when we're in the end of season review podcast and we look back and we say, what did they do? That's the end of season review. I think we will be saying, oh, well, we are hampered by injuries at the wrong times at the end of the season. But it's no excuse. And I don't know, I just think we've got to find ways around it. And whether that's, I don't know, pushing Bowery forward and having and playing the likes of Law, we've got to find these things, because we can't start players who are like the quality of George Maris, who are playing at 30%, when realistically we don't need to. We could have allowed him to have had another week to get from 30% to 60% or 65, 70, and that makes a bigger difference over the shorter amount of games that we've got left. Especially when you think Callum Johnson's now pretty much fully fit. Well, let's get him back in at right back. Let's get Hewitt across to left back. Let's push Bowery forward. The options are there. We just got to have the bravery to use them.
I just personally think I would keep Hewitt. I know it's only my opinion, but leave Hewitt where he is, right back. He has been phenomenal. If he needs to go centre back, and get Johnson in, so be it. But I would prefer to keep Hewitt where he is. I would like to see Kilgore, and I would like to see Harbottle there. And, obviously, if Barry's still there, if Macca's not fit, if he not played James Law, if he doesn't want to play Wallace there. But, I mean, look how well Wallace has played. When he's played in front of the back 4, he's played really, really well.
Now, you see, I banged on about playing James Gale in the last 6 games. The second name on the team sheet next to James Gale needs to be Kieran Wallace, because in that CDM role, the way we're playing at the moment, with that back 4 and that creative midfield, Kieran Wallace is the anchor to that side. He breaks play down. He's physical.
Played really well.
He drops into centre half to allow Hewitt and Bowery to push on. He is the player which nobody thought he could be But he is. And do you know what else he's got in his locker? And it's going to happen. And I'm going to call it. If we get to the playoff final, it's going to be him that scores the winner. Kieran Wallace has got a whopper in his locker. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You might want to rephrase that.
No.
Good old Kieran.
I said locker, not underpants.
Well,
Filthy buggers.
Fair play to him.
Cam's gone.
No, I think he has played well, to be fair to lad. And I think a lot of fans have appreciated that as well, you know, on your notice boards and whatever, when you go on and your social media at the end of the match and have a look through. You know, he's had some, well, Akins has, Wallace has, there's been quite a few had stick. We've all had stick in the past. But, you know, it's proving quite a few people wrong. But that's only with his run of games, like Nigel said, you know. But as soon... What happens as soon as he thinks Maris is fit?
Yeah,
Wallace is on the bench.
Stubborn Nigel strikes again, and he needs to not be stubborn
work.
Nigel. Needs to not be stubborn Nigel. I think we're on the cusp of a good thing. We do need those extra 1-2%, but ultimately, Cam, it boils down to me to just having that persistence to keep getting the shots in on goal. Maybe when it gets to the later stages of the game, having a little bit more urgency and getting the balls in the box. It's good to dominate play early doors and play that nice, passive, fluent football. But as the time ticks on, if it's 1-0 or 0-0 or, you know, on a knife edge and we need that extra level, direct, crosses in the box, do things early. Because what's really frustrating me at the moment is the sands of time are sometimes against us and we're taking 30, 40 seconds longer to take a throw. When the ball goes out, it doesn't need to be Elliot Hewitt or Jordan Bowery that takes that throw. If you've got the ball and the attack's on and a player's in space, get it in, get it to feet. Play.
And I think, to be honest, I think a lot of this can come back to sort of like building from the back as well. I think the most frustrating thing that I saw on Monday myself was just when Christy Pym had got the ball, just far too hesitant and far too slow in making a decision. The one time that he then, all right, granted it wasn't the quickest of releases, but hang on. When he does get the ball out, he's straight to, I can't remember who it was, whoever was under Bishop Street, I can't remember if it was Law or...
Might have been Perch.
Whoever it was, he bowls it out and he's completely made a hash of it. He didn't get it out quick enough, and then when he did get it out, he threw it straight to their player. It's just like, just frustrating. And I think that compared to last season, where you'd got Nathan Bishop was always a little bit more switched on. Personally, I think Pym's no disrespect to Pym. I just think he's a bit slow. Like his decision making can be a bit hesitant sometimes.
Well, we may well.
What Graham's going to say here.
Yeah, we may well on Saturday see the enforced return of Flinders, because if anyone went to the opening training session on Wednesday, was it? You will have noticed that Christy Pym didn't train. The video's out, and Nigel Clough says, "I think we've only got 13 training. Christy Pym isn't training, so Flinders may well get a game. I hope he does, because I'm going to be honest." At Grimsby last time in the Stuffed Crust Cup, Flinders had a shocker, so he needs to get some redemption there. But I've got full faith in him if he comes in, and I think that may well be that extra couple of percent that we need. Obviously, none of us, I presume, went to the open training session. I was in Loughborough on Wednesday, so I couldn't get. Cam was in uni. He was asleep in bed watching Holmes Under the Hammer like every other typical student. And Alan was, of course, working.
Yes, I was, but I had the call because they had a problem with the microphone and whatever. So after I'd finished work, I went down. Obviously, it had all been finished, but there must have been 150, 175 people queuing all the way around down to the bottom to go into the Kevin Bird suite and the 1861, for the signatures and whatever, which was nice to see, to be fair. They all hung around and whatever, and I just went and sorted microphone out.
Ah, Good on you. Alan Wilson to the rescue again. Get him a shirt and play him up front on Saturday. Keeley says Flinders deserves a game Saturday, and watching them Wednesday looks like he will be. Well, we'll wait and see. Talking of Saturday away at Grimsby is podcast predictions time. And I've just realised, because I'm not where I usually am, I have no pen and paper. So I'm going to be on my phone doing this. So I'm not ignoring you. And on Instagram, tweeting Hunted Podcast stuff at Hunted Pod if you're a fan of the Channel 4 show Hunted.
His internet doesn't work, but he can still post that podcast. Shocking.
Damn straight.
It wasn't me that pointed that out, by the way.
Yeah, damn straight. Right, so podcast predictions for Grimsby, or Gromsby as my phone's just called it. Alan, I'm going to go to you first. Grimsby away, please.
Grimsby 1, Mansfield 2, win for Mansfield, 28th minute.
Okay, Cam.
I'm also going to go with a 2-1 win. And I'm going to say 49th minute.
Ooh, brave. I am going to go for a 2-2 draw. And I'm going to say that it will be the 7th minute. We'll get everybody else's predictions. Clive can't be with us tonight. Nick also can't be with us whilst he's having a little bit of work done on the new Mansfield Town Shirts HQ. And if anyone's seen Nathan Edge, please let us know. We have no idea where he is or how he is. I'm sure he's fine. As always, get in the link in the description to get involved with podcast predictions. You must do it no later than 1 hour and 1 minute before kickoff on Saturday. And as Richard says, some of us have to work to earn enough money to go and watch the Stags. Yeah, absolutely, we do. You've got to pay the bills and all of that stuff as well. So fingers crossed that the Stags can do it on Saturday. And of course, the trip to Newport on Tuesday night. We'll put all of our predictions on social media as usual. One hope each, please, from the Grimsby game and the Newport game, other than the obvious of a win. What are you hoping, Cam, from Mansfield on Saturday as they make the trip to the seaside?
Obviously taking his chances. We've been up there all season with creating chances, and I know a lot of people don't like the stat, but expected goals, the shots taken per 90 times by the times actually scored. We're up there, and we just don't. we don't deserve to be. We're just not taking his chances. We're creating, but we're not taking. So, as much as I want, obviously, I've put 2-1 on the podcast predictions. I'm hoping that we go out and get a few more. I'm not confident that we will, but it's just at this time of the season, we've now sort of like got to be putting teams to the sword, regardless of what position they're in. So that's actually putting in performance is the main one, but taking his chances when they come.
Alan, your hope?
My hope is for a better performance, as in winning-wise, and something for you, Craig, because I think you deserve it. Of the 2 goals, let's have Mr. Gale and Mr. Wallace on the score sheet.
I will be buzzing if Wallace scores. If Wallace unleashes his whopper, let's leave it as that, shall
we? Wallace's whopper. If he scores at One Call Stadium, I'm going to announce that.
Oh, yes. Dude, I think everyone would love that. I mean, I'll let you into a little secret. I mean, I think a lot of people know this. It's probably quite sad, and people will probably slag me off for it. Whatever, I don't care. But you all know that I've really struggled with not doing the commentary thing this season, and there are certain points in games where I sit there, I still commentate in my head, and it still goes on. And as Wallace hit the shot from on Saturday, which nearly went in, I think he hit the bar or it was top corner Bishop Street. I had the line It's a whopper from Wallace. Like, that's what I would have screamed if I'd have been commentating on it. So you never know. Wallace's whopper may well be unleashed one of these days. Richard says,
possibly 7, possibly 8 games to go.
You never know. Richard says, my hope is just 2 wins. And Chris says, still doesn't feel like we're the joint top scorers. No, it doesn't whatsoever. My hope for the next 2 games, well, if you've seen the series Ted Lasso, I'm going to share a line which Coach Beard says to Nate halfway through series 2. And it's simply 2 words. Do better. That's all we've got time for on tonight's Mansfield Matters podcast. My thanks, as always, to the Mansfield Matters podcast panel and to you guys at home for watching the live feed or indeed listening via all good podcast apps. Make sure you shout about it to all your friends and hit that notification bell via social media or via your podcast app to make sure you never miss a Mansfield Matters podcast. Don't forget to get involved with podcast predictions. The link that you need is in the description, and you must submit your prediction no later than 1 hour and 1 minute before Saturday's game away at Grimsby. Will it be a grim afternoon by the seaside, or will it be ice creams and smiles for all as the Stags try to gain victory and propel themselves up the table once again? Join us next week on the Mansfield Matters podcast to discuss that and, of course, the midweek trip to Newport to find out if Nigel Clough's men have got what it takes to finish in the playoffs for a second successive season, or will it be League 2 once again? Strap yourselves in. This journey is the journey that keeps on giving. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you next time on the show for the fans by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters podcast. Good night.